Hi, I'm Michael Caju.
And I'm Adee Caju, and you're listening to the WAG podcast. This podcast is about health, wellness, and personal development.
Each episode is a short conversation between Adee and I on a single topic with actionable steps. We cover everything from food, mindset, fitness, and relationships.
We started WAG because of the way health and fitness changed our lives, so we hope to share a tool or two that helps you along your way.
Welcome to the WAG podcast. This is your host, Michael Caju, and this is the third and final installment of our special little series that we're doing. Our intention with this series is to spread positive messages during a time where there is so much negativity going on. And to do that, I've interviewed 3 WAG members, and today I'm joined on the show by a WAG member named Darryl. Darryl got COVID and was inches from death. He was put into a medically induced coma and intubated for, I believe he said 6 days. And he just has a super moving and inspiring story. So in this episode, he shares his entire story. He shares how that has shifted his perspective on life, some insights that he's had about his own life and the world. And I asked him a question at the end: if you could pass on one lesson or piece of wisdom that you've learned through all of this, what would that be? So this one was a real pleasure for me to do because I've gotten to know Darryl over the last couple of weeks, but I haven't heard the full story. So it was great to hear the full story from the man himself. I hope you enjoy. Without further ado, please help me welcome Darryl.
Hey, how are you, Michael? Good to be on here today.
Yeah, dude, it's such a pleasure, man. You have such an inspiring story, and I'm so excited for the rest of our members and for regular listeners of this podcast to just get to hear it and feel the experience that you went through. It's so powerful.
Great. I'd love to tell it.
So before we get into that, just give us a little bit of background. Who are you? Where are you from? Who do you live with? What do you do for a living?
Okay. My name is Darryl Chahon. 47-year-old, we'll call it a CrossFit competitive athlete, or trying to be. I live at home with my wife and my youngest son. So I have 2 boys, one who's 23 and one who's 21. The 21-year-old lives with us at home, and my wife and I have been married now 24 years, going on 25 years this year.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's a lot of work, and it's pretty lucky to be with her still this amount of time. But I own a hardwood sawmill that's an hour and a half south of me in the country in Millersburg, Ohio. I actually have 25 Amish employees and 2 non-Amish employees.
Really? Oh, yeah, man, that could be a whole nother conversation. I love the Amish. I'm fascinated by them.
One of the best workforces I've ever had.
Wow, cool.
I mean, believe me, there's intricacies that have to be dealt with, but no, great workforce and great people. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of who I am. Somebody who's been pushing and driving and striving. I've owned the mill for 8 years. I've been married for 24. We had our kids when we were really young, like literally a year and a half after we got married. The first one came along, and we've just kind of driven along. Liv started off living in a 1-bedroom apartment with a mattress on the floor, and that's all we owned. And here we are today in a nice house. Not an extravagant house. Our nice house we bought in 2001, and we're taken care of. So.
That's awesome, man. So only a few weeks ago, you were on your deathbed because of COVID-19. And I want to hear the full story on here. But before we get into that, what were your first reactions when this all hit? Where were you? What went through your head, and how were you impacted immediately?
So it was late February, early March when really everything started hitting and all the news was coming out, and Wuhan was getting pegged pretty well over there in China. And the minute I saw it, Michael, my wife said I became a different person. I didn't realize this, and I'm trying to think back and trying to retrace all these steps, but there's a lot of things in my mind that are kind of blurred, and I'm still trying to put together. There's some weird things that I did right when I was sick. I didn't even know, and I can explain those when I get into the story, but I was scared, Michael, like right off the bat, just scared scared. And if you know me as a person, for the people that do know me, I'm not scared of anything. I mean, if there's a wall, I'm going to go through it. One point in my life, I fought MMA, with Stipe Miocic, who's a heavyweight champion, was one of my sparring partners. He was one of the guys kicking my ass every week. And my wife said there was just this fear about me, and I was watching the news all the time. Okay, gut check here. Darryl doesn't watch the news. I'm the first person to tell you, stop, get away from that, do something productive, go, be physically active, listen to a podcast that you can learn something from, read a book, do something other than watch the news, because it's just negativity and fear driving. And here I am glued to everything about COVID this whole time before I even got sick. And not only that, Michael, I became one of these people. I kind of prepared for what was coming. It's almost like I knew, but I don't know how you could drive it or say it, but it's like I got the house prepped in case something were to happen to me. Like, specifically, it felt like it was coming for me. We got medicines from doctors that I knew might help in the case, with a nebulizer and the stuff that goes in the nebulizer. I got prescriptions for that from my asthma doctor. And even though I don't have asthma, I have allergies, so he gives me shots every couple weeks. I got a Z-Pack from my physician. What do I need a Z-Pack for? I don't even take Tylenol or Advil. Stocked the house up, sent my advisor on my board down to my mill by himself, because I told them, the Amish, I'm not coming down. I could be a carrier of this thing when it all starts. And there was literally, at that time, in Holmes County, where it's located, there was 0 cases at the time. I didn't want to be the guy that goes down there and wipes out the whole Amish community. So I said, I'm not going down. So I sent my advisor, who's also from the country up in Michigan, though. He went down, and we changed the way we do business. Like, why did I do this right before I got sick? I can't tell you all these things, and I even prepared when the government called out for disaster loans and things like that. That's one thing. When I did get sick, I was applying for the disaster loan, the EIDL. I don't even remember doing it, Michael, at the end.
Damn.
Like, guys on my floor told me they heard me vacuuming in the office a couple days before I went into the hospital. And they said I avoided everybody. They're like, thank you, Darryl. You didn't come near us. Normally you come say hi, you come chat for a while. They said you ran by, you went and did, we could hear vacuums running after about half hour. And they said, you were out of here. Didn't even say goodbye. And they said, we thought it was weird. And then we found out what happened to you.
So then what happened?
So it was actually March 24th. And it was funny because my wife's grandmother, who's kind of the matriarch of their family, there's like 100 and plus of them. They're all from Chile. They all live within like 10 minutes of us. Really, really tight knit family. Very good family. And her mother had gotten pneumonia, and it was influenza B. And so she was in the hospital right before I got sick. So we went to go see her, and I was really nervous. I kept telling everybody, there was even a family member came back from Chile. I said, you shouldn't even be going in there. You've been on airplanes. You could have had international travel. Like, I was freaked out. And so then we got her to go home, but she's 86 years old, so she needed help. And so we all signed up, some of us grandkids. I'm, married to her granddaughter. I had even signed up to take care of her the day after I got sick. Well, that was on Wednesday, March 25th, was my turn to go in and care for her. Well, Tuesday, March 24th, I started getting symptoms, chills, fevers, very, very strong headaches, pressure in the head, and a little bit of a cough. And Tuesday night, I kind of slept for a little bit, and I was really bad shape. And my wife said, maybe you shouldn't go tomorrow. And I said, no, let's not risk it. I don't know what I'm coming down with. Let's call it off for tomorrow. So somebody else is going to have to fill in for me.
Was there anything in your head saying, man, maybe I have this at that point?
Yeah. First thing I thought of when it happened was like, oh man, it's coming. It's coming, Michael. And it's like I knew. And what's funny is my wife and I, within the first 24 hours, we had a discussion. And just, I always say things to her, like kind of foreshadowing. I'm a person that likes to look ahead. I like to prepare for the worst, but expect the best. And I told her, Claudia, if I do go under the ventilator. And she was like, what? What are you talking about? And I said, I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. And at that point, you heard the numbers. Everybody was like, oh, that's a death wish. You get put on ventilation and intubation. It was like, less than 50-50. And why I even said that, I had no clue. So that was just odd, but I was just being an odd person for those 30 days, once I got sick. And so it wasn't until Thursday, March 26th, we called our family physician, right? And at that point, they had said no unnecessary, unless it was, emergency, no visit. So we were expecting a telehealth. Well, no one ever called me back. We ended up leaving a message with the nurse, please call us back. I'm getting these symptoms. We think it might be, can we get tested? Because at that point, they weren't testing anybody over 61 or without pre-existing conditions. So I wasn't going to get tested. Well, then Sunday of that week, so I fought it from Thursday or Tuesday till Sunday the 29th, my wife's like, that's it. We're going to go to the local emergency room and see what's going on with you. And we thought at that point, because I was starting to wheeze, and I had pneumonia like 5 years ago, walking pneumonia. And so I know what that crackling, popping sound is. And I thought I had it. And I'm like, shoot, Claudia, I think I have pneumonia. She did too. So she took me to the emergency room. I was there 45 minutes. They took a chest x-ray, no pneumonia, but they saw I was in bad shape. They said, go home. We're going to write an order for you tomorrow to go get tested. And that was downtown. So Monday, March 30th, I drive downtown Cleveland. They gave me an order to go because you couldn't go unless you had an order. And it was this underground garage, Michael, and it was unbelievably crazy. Like pulling into this thing, hazmat suits, like something out of a movie, like Outbreak.
Really?
Like white suits, with the big head shields and tent set up, and you would pull up to the first monitor, so the police would direct you into the garage, your underground garage. And I get to this first monitor, there's a stop sign, and there's a monitor to my right where I didn't roll down my window. It says, don't roll down your window. So the first stop wasn't, and it tells you dial this number. I dialed the number, and Mr. Chahone, they're like, we just checked your license plates. Could you verify your birth date, everything? And I was like, okay, so I did. Social security number. Okay, move up to the next station and you'll get the next instructions. Once again, to another screen. And it just basically tells you what's about to happen. You read off the screen, and it's like, when you pull up, put it in park, roll down your window, await for them to come over, And it was, so basically roll down my window. They came over with the big swab. They go up your nose, and that hurts like, oh my God. 10 seconds, and they count down. And I'm like, oh, she's like, I know it hurts. It'll be done over real soon. So they get that done. So then I go home, because you don't know for another 24 to 48 hours. Well, the next day, and I have this thing where you can go, it's called My Chart on University or Cleveland Clinic. And so I go look, I logged in, and it said, you have a message positive for coronavirus. And I'm like, oh, great. Maybe I'm be one of the lucky ones, just hopefully doesn't, I can ride this out. That night, it really, really got bad. I just couldn't breathe anymore. The fevers were running over 106 degrees. My wife's like, that's it. We're going to take you to the hospital, not the emergency room this time.
106. Damn.
106. And she had towels on me and everything. So I go, and she didn't want to take me. What we talked about afterwards, we've had long, lengthy discussions about this whole process and what we both have gone through. And she was like, Darryl, I didn't want to take you. I wanted to drive back because I knew I wouldn't be allowed to be in there with you. And I just wanted to drive back and see if we could ride this out at home. But she goes, you were just in bad shape. So I get there, and literally, they don't even let her in. They don't let her out of the car. Everything. She was in the waiting room with me, and they're like, you can't go any further. And she gave me a charger for my phone because I had nothing. I had my phone, I had my clothes, and she's like, here, honey. And so I go in. And they put me in a part of the hospital where there was other COVID patients, but they were obviously not in ICU yet, so no need for intubation, or it wasn't, a little bit further accelerated. Within a couple days, so they gave me the hydrochloroquine, which is also known as another name, plaquenone, which is given to lupus patients. But the reaction it had with me was just not good. Like immediately, my oxygen levels, my blood oxygen levels would go down. My breathing was getting worse as I was trying to test it on that little, tube you blow the little balls on. Things just got worse over 2 days. So they stopped, but it was that second day where, it was Friday night / Saturday morning that weekend where these alarms just went off in the room. I'd never heard anything like it. And, lights and sirens. And the next thing I know, I had 5 nurses and 2 doctors in the room with me, throwing me onto a gurney, face down, asked me to get my wife on the cell phone, which they did. And as we're running down the hallway, heading to ICU because it was in another part of the hospital, they put her on the phone and, they asked, hey, Darryl, will you give your wife permission, over all your affairs as we put you in intubation? And I'm like, yes. And then on the other line, I have my wife basically asking me, hey, honey, how are you? What do you feel? Are you okay? My only answer to her was, listen, Claudia, I'm finally going to get some rest, and don't worry about me. I'll be back.
Damn.
So, that was, that night she had a panic attack. I mean, just not being able to see me, not knowing what was going to happen, if I was going to come back. She didn't sleep all night. She thought she was getting COVID, through the panic attack, not being able to sleep, having trouble breathing.
Yeah.
And then our family doctor the next day, prescribed her some medicine that she could sleep, some sleeping pills, Ambien, so she could sleep. And, that's where she started relaxing and, just started focusing on, okay, what are the good news? What's changing? What's coming up?
Got it. So then what happened? I've been around, my best friend was in a coma for a while. So I know that when they intubate you, they have to put you in a medically induced coma, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's just it's like a deep sleep. You don't remember, I'm assuming you don't remember anything from being in a coma.
No. And so I go back to the notes, because my wife basically, to update everyone, all my friends, family, she didn't realize how many people that I knew, because she's a very private, reserved person. And then all the family that she had all around the world reaching out, it was too overwhelming. So she started putting posts on Facebook once a day as updates, because she would only talk to the doctors or nurses at the hospital twice a day. And so she put an update for everybody to know. And so I go through those to see what happened every day that I was in intubation, which was 6 days total. But the first day was the most remarkable, Michael. And this is what I attribute to.
Are you talking about the first day that you were intubated or out of it?
Yes.
Okay.
The first day that I was intubated, and I only know this story because I see what's been said and what happened on Facebook. But so I went into intubation, and my lungs had failed, and at that point my kidneys failed, and I was starting to have heart failure. So they had to try to put me under dialysis that first night that I was in intubation, and they tried to put a tube, or I guess the line, in my neck. Well, it was clotting severely, so they couldn't get the line into my neck. So they had to wait a day, and then they ended up going through my femoral vein down to my leg. But that first day, I went from 0% lung capacity and 100% ventilator to 60% lung capacity and 40% ventilator in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
When she called, and they finally, they didn't get back to her for a while because it was just back and forth. And they said, look, the doctors were like, we don't know what's going on here. We've never seen anything like this, but this is great news. His lungs are starting to work, and they're starting to kick back in again. Now it's just wait and watch, and it might be sooner than we thought. So, like they said, they've never seen it. And then I've asked other doctors since then, and they're like, Darryl, that's almost impossible. One day, to get back 60% of your lung capacity. And I attribute that obviously to the fitness levels, the training within CrossFit. We're doing these short bursts, you're on these machines, the skier, the biker, the row machine, where you take yourself to points where you can't breathe, where you're red in the face, where you're pulling so hard, you're hurting. That's the only thing I can say, Michael. And then, the nutrition being with, working against gravity and Ali for 2 years. If it weren't for those things, how do you get that rebound so quick?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where everybody says it's impossible, it's impossible. That's the only thing I can say it is.
Now, are you expecting Dave Castro to reach out with an invite as for you being the wild card to the next CrossFit Games? No, not at all. I know how good of an athlete I am.
I know one day I do want to go to the games as a masters, but no. I would not even compare to those guys. Not even close.
Sorry to interrupt you, man. Keep going.
That's funny.
And did you say, so you said, what did you call your coach? What name
Phil?
did you say? No. WAG coach.
Oh, Ali.
Ali, is it ALI?
Yeah.
It's Ali. It's Ali.
Ali Karen. So
Yes.
that's what I call her.
I'm going to start calling her Ali.
like Muhammad Ali now.
Yes. Oh my God. That is amazing. Okay. So you get back 60% of your lung capacity and you're using the ventilator for only 40% of the oxygen that's coming in. Then what happens?
So that was Saturday, Sunday. By Thursday, they wanted to pull me off of the ventilator. They thought that it was a point, they had still been running me on dialysis, but if things were getting better, they had pulled me off of the ventilator, wasn't pushing anymore. So I was getting 100% oxygen through my lungs. So they thought there was the time on, Thursday night. So the night before Good Friday, to pull me off, which they did. I don't remember coming to, I guess they were talking to me. I was lucid. I was responding to questions and directions. I don't remember really anything until Friday morning. I just know that Friday morning, so late Thursday night, early Friday morning, I have a surgeon in my room and he's like, "Hey, Darryl, how are you? I'm Dr. So-and-so. And I need to pull this dialysis line out of your femoral artery. And I need to warn you, it's going to hurt really bad." And this is the first I recall of anything. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to say, and they would ask me, "Where are you at? Do you know why you're here?" And yeah, I'm in the hospital. Yes. And so he goes, "Okay, here we go." And so he reaches down to my leg, closer to my groin, and pulls this line out, Michael. And I'm supposed to be under tremendous amounts of painkiller. And it hurt so bad, I screamed. And the next thing he does is he puts both hands over where he pulled the line out of, because you could bleed out pretty quickly, from just the blood coming out of that femoral artery. Well, he's holding on, and I'm looking at the clock. Okay, now this is the CrossFit clock watcher in me. 5 minutes goes by. Another 5 minutes goes by. Now we're at 15 minutes, and I'm like, "Hey, doc, how much longer?" He goes, "It should only be about 10 minutes more, and then we should be able to get the bleeding to stop." 10 minutes goes by. Now we're at 25. We're at 30. We're at 40. What? I'm like, "Doc, what's going on?" Yeah. And he goes, "Just a couple more minutes." Just at about an hour, he calls a male nurse in who's right outside. Basically he's just like waving him over. Male nurse comes in, big boy, by the way, and slams his hands down even further. The doctor's like, "Hey, I'm getting tired. I need you to put pressure on this." So he's like, "I don't know if we're going to get it to stop bleeding." He goes, "We might have to go to sandbags." And I'm like, sitting here listening to this, I'm going, what is going on? So they couldn't get me to stop. 2 hours later, they finally had to, they use these sandbags, Michael. They look like bricks, and they put them in pillowcases, and they basically laid 20 pounds of sand on near my groin on my leg to get me to stop. And they were just constantly watching me, to make sure that it was actually stopping and starting to clot.
Yeah.
That was crazy, because that hurt so bad. And, even a couple days afterwards, I was afraid to even touch down. Like, you have this weird feeling and you look at it and like, I don't even want to touch this thing. What if I cut it right back open? So, that was Good Friday, or the Friday that week. And it was Saturday afternoon, so late morning, early afternoon, that they actually pulled me out to take me down to that original part of the hospital that I was in when I first got checked in. And that's where I saw Michael. So the couple nights that I was awake, so let's say, Friday morning, Saturday morning, was miserable because I couldn't sleep. So I didn't sleep at all. And all I could see out the window in my room is nurses and doctors, like every, at least once an hour, maybe once every half hour, just running down the hallways. You'd see them disappear. You'd hear people screaming. You'd hear alarms going off. And then they're running back down with a body on a gurney. And you're going, what is going on? And I would ask the nurses, like every time a nurse came in, I'm like, did somebody die yet? That was my first question. And they're like, no, nobody's died. And the fact was that nobody did die while I was there, but they had to either be intubating people or resuscitating people or doing some sort of procedure, to make sure that they kept breathing and going.
Mm-hmm.
So that was brutal. The fact that I didn't know.
Can I ask you a quick question about that Thursday? So you come back out of this coma. What were your first thoughts and feelings as you realized you were going to live? And maybe that wasn't until Friday or whenever that you thought that, but what was that like?
No, you're absolutely no. It's a great question. There was a few thoughts in my head. Number one, my concern was for my wife and my son that lived with me at home. And, I'm like, man, if I'm this sick, what's Claudia going through? Is she okay? I haven't talked to her. I don't know. I didn't even know how long I had been in intubation. So I didn't realize, I'm looking at dates and I'm trying to figure out when did I come to the hospital and everything. And I'm like, man, I hope she's okay. I haven't heard from her. Nobody said anything to me. I hope she's not in the hospital. My son, Chris, is he okay? And then my mind quickly goes to, oh my God, like my business. I have the sawmill and I'm the key guy. I'm the one that makes all the cash calls and has access to the bank accounts, and what's going on there? And did they close me down? And that's, lots of families that aren't going to get paid and taken care of, and all our vendors and, our subcontractors, our loggers and truckers. And so I had no clue. So that's all that's running through my mind is I can't sleep and I'm wide awake, Michael. And I realize I'm going to live. And at that point, I asked God to take me. I just said, take me. I'm done. This is too much. I have all this life insurance, for Keyman, for business. Just take me. My family will be fine. Everybody will be better off without me. It was too unbearing, the unknowing and the pain that I was going through. I didn't want to be there. I was like, just take me. And it wouldn't go, I wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't even sleep. And so, I attribute that. There was lots of people, prayer chains all over the world. I didn't even realize how many people cared or knew about me or, respected me or had anything to do with me. And I joke around now and I tell them, oh, you guys prayed for me and I'm here now. And now you got to deal with me. But no, thanks. Thanks for everybody that prayed and cared and sent good thoughts, because my belief is without the power of prayer, I don't get out of there alive, because I prayed for death. I was praying for my own death while everybody else is praying for me to come out okay.
Wow.
So
how has this experience changed your perspective on life?
It's funny you ask. I keep asking, why me? And this weekend I had a couple, friends have family members that I don't know personally, but they passed away because of COVID. And I talked to I have a mental strength coach that I have now on top of, my physical therapist, my counselor, my nutritionist, or my whole team that I have with me. And she's gone through, she has, there's an illness, disease she has of the lungs, that she's lived longer than most average patients would. And so the first thing she told me, Darryl, is, look, this is not uncommon for you to feel strange or, feel guilty to be alive or to have gone through this. And she goes, but what are you going to do with it now? And I said, well, I've been thinking about it. I don't know what my purpose here is. Obviously, there's a purpose if I'm here. I truly believe things happen for a reason. But the two things I did decide, after this weekend and really going through this, the last 4 weeks of my mind, is if I'm not making my life better and the people around me on a daily basis, I've wasted time. Then I shouldn't even be here. I mean, if I have this opportunity, this renewal of life, I need to make somebody's life better or improve myself, or both at the same time. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do now, or as I look at things now.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I've thought about this quite a bit in my life, and what I currently believe is what we choose to do, right? Like what our career is, the things that you could see on a camera, right? The things that we're actually doing out in the world, they don't matter nearly as much as how we do them, right? It doesn't matter if you go and start a new business that's more fulfilling or has a bigger impact or anything like that. I think what matters is how we carry ourselves on a day-to-day basis, how we treat our inner circle, how we treat every person that we interact with. And that stuff, we don't have to know, we don't have to have direction or know what we, like, quote unquote, know what we want to do with our lives. We can access that immediately, right? We can just look people in the eyes, give them our presence, and treat them a little bit better. Try to lift them up if we feel inspired and have the energy to do so on that day. I find that really comforting.
No, absolutely. I agree with you, Mike. I mean, the one thing, so I'm kind of I consider myself kind of a loner. I'm a guy that runs on my own. I've got this business, I've got this family that I feel I've done a great job with, and we've kept it together for 25 years, and two boys that are I don't even know why they belong to me, because they're so good in my mind, and I'm so proud of them. But obviously I've done something right, and the neighborhood stepping behind me. I mean, like coming home and the neighbors line the streets. We live in this little small bungalow here in, middle class America in a suburb of Cleveland. And the streets were lined with all my neighbors with pots and pans and welcome home signs, and everybody banging on them, and cars beeping on the street. And I was overwhelmed. I was just like, wow. And I don't even know half of these people, but because I do take the time or say hello or try to spend, but I don't give enough time, if that makes sense, because I'm always running. I'm always on to the next thing. I'm trying to make the CrossFit Games. I'm trying to make my business better. I'm trying to give the time to my family, but I mean, there's so much more. There's so much more we can do.
Amen. Amen, man. Yeah, that resonates with me so hard. I've really, one thing I've talked about quite a bit since being in isolation is how much I love the simplicity and the pace of life right now. And it's given me like the lack of decisions, right? There are so many decisions that I don't have to make anymore. Like, do I want to go and hang out with X, Y, or Z friend? Do I want to go to a restaurant? I don't have to make those decisions because those haven't been options for a while. And because of that, I'm able to pour more energy into being present with the people around me and to reaching out to people and to spending more, I guess, being more present with myself as well, right? I'm not constantly rushing to the next thing. And it's been been a really special time. And it's so important that I remember this. And I think if, anyone listening, if that resonates with you, it's so important that we remember these insights and lessons that the universe is sending us right now, right? This may be the most intense, unique experience that we ever go through. And we're likely having a different perspective on our life and the world. And there's a lot of valuable shit coming to the surface. So it's really important that we remember this and we do something about it.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. You bring a thought to mind, Michael, that I've always said in my life, the best things I've done or the best results I've had. And there's a saying for this, and it says, sometimes the best results or the best decisions are made when you have no options. So sometimes we have to have no options to make the right decision.
I love it, man. So as we begin closing here, if you could give one lesson or impart one lesson or one piece of wisdom on everyone listening to the show, something that you really embody in your life, or maybe it's something that's come up as a result of your story with COVID, what would that be? What would that lesson be?
So a couple things. I'm going to branch it off. I'm going to jump and kind of violate your question. The first one would be fitness and nutrition. We don't realize how important it is. And for 40 years, I had the worst nutrition, wasn't taught properly. And then here, a couple of years ago, I joined WAG and really start to learn. And it's a battle to this day. To this day, I still fight it. But because of the improvements, I think it's helped me get to where I'm at. Fitness wise, also really pushing as a competitive CrossFitter for the last 2 years and training so much and really in focusing and intentional training, it's helped me. And the other piece that I've learned with all the people around me that I didn't know and have been so supportive, and all these communities I'm a part of that now I realize who my friends are and who I can count on. Never take for granted the people around you. As little time as you might spend with them, as little as you might see them, you don't know what they're going through, or just the fact that a simple hello or how are you today or what's going on might mean to that person.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you being on here.
Thanks for joining us. Stay in touch by signing up for our newsletter at workingagainstgravity.com or on Instagram at workingagainstgravity.
And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, and refer a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode. Talk to you then.